The mist hung low over Venice's Grand Canal, cloaking the promenade in a ghostly shroud. At dawn, a scream shattered the silence, drawing gondoliers and early risers to a ghastly sight. Signora Giulia Moretti, the city's radiant socialite, lay lifeless on the cobblestones, a jewelled dagger piercing her heart. Her sapphire necklace, famed for its curse, was gone. Whispers of foul play swirled as the tide lapped nearby, indifferent to the tragedy. Hercule Poirot, summoned by a cryptic note, stepped onto the scene, his grey cells already stirring. What secrets did the promenade conceal? Chapter 1. The Shadow of the Gondola. At the heart of the commotion lay Signora Giulia Moretti, Venice's most radiant socialite, her beauty now marred by death. She sprawled across the cobblestones, her emerald silk gown splayed like a broken fan, its hem kissing the lapping tide. A jewelled dagger, its hilt encrusted with garnets, protruded from her chest, the blood pooling beneath her, a stark contrast to the promenade's elegance. Her sapphire necklace, famed for its brilliance and whispered curse, was conspicuously absent. The crowd murmured, some in horror, others in morbid curiosity. As Hercule Poirot, summoned by a cryptic note slipped under his hotel door, arrived with his characteristic precision. His patent leather shoes clicked on the stones, his moustache impeccably waxed despite the early hour. The note, written in an elegant hand, had read simply, "Death on the promenade. Your grey cells are needed. Come at once." No signature, no explanation, only urgency. Poirot's sharp eyes surveyed the scene, noting the constable's nervous fidgeting, the onlookers' hushed speculation, and the peculiar stillness of the body, as if Julia had been posed for her final act. "Monsieur le Constable," Poirot began, his voice a measured cadence, "what is known of this tragedy?" The young officer, barely 20, adjusted his cap, his face pale. "Signore Poirot, she was found at 5 o'clock, just as the mist began to lift. No witnesses, no sound until the scream. A gondolier, Pietro, heard it and found her." Poirot's brow arched. "No witnesses in Venice. Mon Dieu, the canals, they have ears. The walls, they whisper someone saw something." The constable swallowed, offering no reply. Poirot knelt beside Julia, his gloved hands hovering over the body with the reverence of an artist studying a canvas. The dagger was exquisite, its blade etched with intricate patterns, suggesting antiquity and wealth. Not a common murderer's weapon, too deliberate, too personal. He noted the angle of the wound, precise, driven with force, yet no signs of a struggle. Had Julia known her killer? Her face, even in death, held a trace of surprise. Her lips parted, as nearby, half hidden by a stone bench, lay a torn glove, its fine silk embroidered with gold thread. Poirot retrieved it with a handkerchief, turning it over in the dim light. The embroidery was distinctive, a pattern favoured by Venice's elite. A clue, perhaps, or a careless mistake. He tucked it into his pocket, his mind already cataloguing possibilities. Was it the killer's, dropped in haste? Or a red herring, planted to mislead? The absence of the sapphire necklace intrigued him most. Its curse, a local legend, spoke of death to its wearer. A superstition Poirot dismissed, yet one that might inspire a killer's imagination. The gondolier, Pietro, lingered at the edge of the crowd, his weathered face taut with unease. Poirot approached, his demeanour disarming, yet probing. "You heard the scream, monsieur. What else did you see?" Pietro shifted, his eyes darting to the canal. "A figure, signore, cloaked, moving fast through the mist. Toward the Rialto, maybe. I couldn't tell if it was man or woman." Poirot's moustache twitched. And this figure, it did not pause, did not look back. Pietro shook his head. Gone, like a shadow. The vagueness was frustrating, but Poirot sensed truth in the man's fear. The cloaked figure was a thread to follow. Giulia Moretti's life, Poirot learned, was a tapestry of glamour woven with threads of intrigue. A widow at 35, she had inherited her husband's fortune and transformed it into influence, hosting galas that drew Venice's aristocracy. Her palazzo, overlooking the Grand Canal, was a beacon of opulence, its chandeliers and frescoes the backdrop to whispered scandals. The sapphire necklace, a gift from her late husband, was both her crown and her curse, its brilliance matched only by the envy it inspired. Whispers of its theft suggested a motive, but Poirot suspected deeper currents. The constable introduced Poirot to the first of the suspects, Signore Marco Bellini, Giulia's lover, a painter whose charm outshone his finances. Marco stood apart, his dark eyes fixed on the body, his hands clenched. She was everything, he murmured, his voice thick with grief or guilt. Poirot noted the paint stains on his cuffs, the dishevelled hair suggesting a sleepless night. Marco's debts were no secret. Had he killed for Giulia's wealth? Monsieur Bellini, Poirot said, where were you at 5 o'clock? Marco hesitated. In my studio, working, alone. A weak alibi, ripe for scrutiny. Next came Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Giulia's rival in Venice's social sphere. Her auburn hair was pinned tightly, her expression one of calculated sorrow. A tragedy, she said, her voice cool. But Giulia courted danger with her excesses. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Excesses, madame? Do elaborate. Isabella's lips pursed. Her parties, her lovers, that cursed necklace, she flaunted it all. Witnesses confirmed she and Giulia argued at the gala hours before, a public spat over a slight long forgotten. Jealousy, Poirot mused, was a motive as old as Venice's stones. Signore Luca Caruso, a shipping magnate, was another guest at the gala. His high, broad frame and blunt manner contrasted with the city's elegance. I barely knew her, he claimed, but his eyes avoided Poirot's. Rumours tied him to Giulia through business dealings, perhaps a failed venture or something darker. Poirot filed this away, sensing Caruso's brusqueness masked unease. Signorina Elena Vitti, Giulia's young protégée, hovered nearby, her delicate features pale with shock. She was my mentor, Elena whispered, clutching a handkerchief. Yet Dr. Antonio Ricci, Giulia's physician, arrived late, his medical bag in hand. I came to certify the death, he said, his voice unsteady. Poirot noted his flushed cheeks, the slight tremor in his hands. Had he been more than a doctor to Giulia? An affair, perhaps, concealed beneath professional decorum? You saw her last night, monsieur? Poirot asked. Ricci nodded. At the gala, she seemed anxious. A clue or a deflection? Poirot's grey cells stirred, piecing together the fragments. Returning to the body, Poirot noticed a detail overlooked. A smudge of ink on Giulia's wrist, barely visible beneath her sleeve. It was fresh, its edges sharp, suggesting she had written or been marked shortly before death. A note, perhaps? A struggle? The ink's shade, a deep indigo, hinted at a fountain pen, a tool of the wealthy. Poirot's mind raced. The dagger, the glove, the missing necklace, the cloaked figure, and now the ink. Each was a thread in the crowd thickened as news of the murder spread, their whispers a chorus of speculation. The curse, an old woman cried, crossing herself. The sapphire takes its toll, Poirot scoffed softly. The curse, it is nonsense. The human heart, it is the true danger. He questioned a fishmonger who claimed to have seen Giulia on the promenade at midnight, alone, her necklace glinting. Why was she there, hours before her death? Had she arranged a clandestine meeting? The fishmonger's tale was vivid, but unconfirmed. Another potential red herring. Poirot paced the promenade, the mist curling around his ankles like a cat. The canal's surface rippled, reflecting the first rays of sunlight, but its depths held no answers. He considered the suspects. Marco, whose debts screamed motive. Isabella, whose jealousy burned bright. Caruso, whose secrets lurked in ledgers. Elena, whose inheritance dangled tantalizingly. And Ricci, whose professional mask might hide passion or betrayal. Each had opportunity, each had reason, yet none fit perfectly. A gondolier, lingering by his boat, caught Poirot's eye. "Signore," he said, lowering his voice, "I heard something else, a splash, just before the scream, not loud, but deliberate." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A splash, you say? Where?" The gondolier pointed to a narrow canal branching off the promenade. "There, near the old bridge." Poirot made a mental note to search. The constable interrupted, holding a small card found in Giulia's purse. Bore the name of a jeweller, Signore Vitale, known for appraising rare gems. Had Giulia planned to sell the necklace, or was it another distraction? Poirot pocketed the card, his mind weaving connections. The glove's embroidery matched Isabella's style, but its tear suggested haste or struggle. The ink smudge pointed to a writer, Caruso perhaps with his business correspondence, or Ricci with his prescriptions. As the sun rose higher, burning away the mist, Poirot felt the weight of the mystery settle upon him. Giulia's death was no random act. It was a performance, staged with care. The dagger's artistry, the necklace's absence, the cloaked figure's flight, all spoke of calculation. Yet the ink smudge, so small, so overlooked, nagged at him. It was personal, intimate, a mark of betrayal. "Monsieur," he murmured, "this is no simple crime. The truth, it hides in the shadows." He turned to the constable. "Summon the suspects to the palazzo tonight. Mademoiselle Moretti's home. It will reveal more than this promenade." The constable nodded, scurrying off. Poirot lingered, his eyes tracing the canal's curve. The gondolier's splash echoed in his thoughts. Had something been discarded in haste? A weapon? A jewel? A secret? He resolved to investigate the canal at dusk, when the crowds thinned. As he stepped away from the body, now covered by a sheet, a child darted through the crowd, pressing a folded paper into Poirot's hand before vanishing. Poirot unfolded it, his pulse quickening. It was a sketch, crude but clear, of a woman resembling Giulia, her throat marked with a dagger. Below, in hurried script, "Beware the one who watches." A warning or another red herring? Poirot's grey cells hummed, the puzzle deepening. The promenade grew quiet, the crowd dispersing as the constable's men cordoned off the scene. Poirot stood alone, the canal's gentle lapping a counterpoint to his racing thoughts. The suspects, the clues, the contradictions, they swirled like the mist itself. Marco's grief, Isabella's disdain, Caruso's evasion, Elena's tears, Ricci's unease, each was a piece, but the whole remained obscured. The sketch in his pocket felt heavy, its warning a challenge to his intellect. Chapter 2. The Sapphire's Curse. The Grand Canal shimmered under a tentative sun, its waters reflecting the gilded facades of Venice's palazzos like a mirror to the city's soul. Hercule Poirot, seated in a gondola gliding toward Giulia Moretti's palazzo, clutched the crude sketch from the promenade. A woman, dagger at her throat, and the warning, "Beware the one who watches." The ink smudge on Giulia's wrist, the torn glove, the missing sapphire necklace, and the cloaked figure haunted his thoughts. The canal's gentle ripples seemed to mock his quest for clarity, whispering secrets just out of reach. Pause for effect. Giulia's palazzo loomed ahead, its marble arches and frescoed walls a testament to her wealth and taste. The gala she hosted the previous night, mere hours before her death, had drawn Venice's elite, suspects all, in Poirot's meticulous mind. He disembarked, his cane tapping the stone steps, and entered the grand hall, where chandeliers cast eerie shadows across gilded mirrors. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and wax, undercut by a faint metallic tang, blood perhaps lingering in memory. Servants bustled, their faces pale, their whispers hushed. The murder had shaken even this bastion of opulence. Poirot was greeted by Signorina Elena Viti, Giulia's protégée, her delicate frame swathed in mourning black. Her eyes, red-rimmed, betrayed grief, or a performance thereof. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling, "this house feels empty without her." Poirot inclined his head, his gaze piercing. "Mademoiselle, grief, it is a mask somewhere poorly. Where were you at 5 this morning?" Elena hesitated, clutching her handkerchief. "In my room, asleep. I heard nothing." Her pause was telling, a crack in her composure Poirot noted for later scrutiny. The hall filled with other guests from the gala, summoned at Poirot's request. Contessa Isabella Rinaldi swept in, her auburn hair a fiery crown, her silk gown whispering of wealth. "A tragedy," she said, her tone cool as the canal's depths. But Giulia invited misfortune with that cursed necklace. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Madam, you speak of curses, but I seek motives. You argued with Signora Moretti last night, no?" Isabella's eyes narrowed. "A trifling spat. She insulted my lineage, as she often did." Her disdain was palpable, a motive rooted in wounded pride. Signore Marco Bellini, Giulia's lover, slouched against a pillar, his artist's hands stained with paint and worry. "I loved her," he said, his voice raw, "but she was complicated." Poirot's gaze lingered on Marco's dishevelled appearance. "Complicated, monsieur, or costly? Your debts, they are well known." Marco flushed, his fingers twitching. "I never asked for her money." His protest rang hollow, and Poirot filed it among the growing threads of suspicion. Signore Luca Caruso, the shipping magnate, entered with a scowl, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. "This is a waste of time," he growled, but his eyes darted to the others, betraying unease. "You knew Signora Moretti through business, oui?" Poirot asked. Caruso shrugged. "A minor investment, nothing more." His brevity was a shield, one Poirot intended to pierce. Dr. Antonio Ricci, Giulia's physician, lingered at the edges, his medical bag clutched tightly. "I only came to help," he murmured, but his flushed cheeks suggested more than professional concern. Poirot gathered them in the drawing room, its walls adorned with Giulia's portraits, her sapphire necklace gleaming in every frame. The curse, whispered among the servants, held that the gem brought death to its wearer, a tale Poirot dismissed as superstition that clouds the truth. Yet the necklace's absence was a puzzle. A servant, Maria, revealed it was insured for 50,000 lire, kept in a safe in Giulia's study. "Was it there last night?" Poirot asked. Maria hesitated. I don't know, signore. The safe was locked. A clue, or another dead end?" Poirot excused himself to examine the study. A room of mahogany and velvet, its air heavy with the scent of old books and ink. The safe, discreetly hidden behind a tapestry, was undisturbed, its lock intact. Yet a faint scratch on the dial suggested tampering. Had someone attempted to open it before the murder? Or was the necklace stolen after Julia's death? Poirot's fingers traced the desk, finding a scrap of paper tucked beneath a blotter. In Julia's elegant script, it read, "Elsie owes me, midnight, promenade." Luca Caruso, perhaps? A meeting turned deadly? Returning to the drawing room, Poirot observed the suspect's interactions. Isabella avoided Marco, her glances sharp as the dagger that killed Julia. Elena hovered near Ricci, her hand brushing his sleeve, a gesture too familiar for mere acquaintance. Caruso stood apart, his jaw tight, as if guarding a secret heavier than his ledger. Poirot's grey cells churned, weaving connections, the ink smudge, the glove, the sketch, and now this note. Each was a fragment, but the whole remained tantalizingly out of reach. He questioned Maria further, away from the others. "Signora Moretti, she was anxious last night, oui?" Maria nodded. She paced Signore, clutching that necklace. She said something about debts unpaid and promises broken. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And who was near her at the gala? Maria recalled Isabella's argument, Marco's whispered pleas, and Caruso's tense exchange with Julia near the balcony. Ricci, she noted, had given Julia a glass of wine, insisting it would calm her nerves once. Had it contained more than wine? Poirot's attention returned to the torn glove from the promenade, its gold embroidery a match for Isabella's wardrobe. Confronted, she scoffed. "That glove! Stolen from my room weeks ago! Someone means to frame me!" Her indignation was convincing, but Poirot sensed artifice. A red herring, perhaps, or a clever deflection. Marco, questioned next, admitted to sketching Julia often, but denied the crude drawing Poirot held. "That's not my work," he said, his voice shaking. "Someone mocks me." Poirot noted the tremor, of fear or guilt. Elena's alibi wavered under scrutiny. A footman saw her leave the palazzo at 4, claiming a walk to clear her head. "I couldn't sleep," she said, her voice fragile. "Julia's words hurt me." "What words?" Poirot pressed, but Eleanor only wept, her silence louder than her tears. Caruso's business with Julia, Poirot learned, involved a failed shipping venture, losses Julia had threatened to expose. She was unreasonable, Caruso muttered. A motive of financial ruin, perhaps? Ricci's role grew murkier. A maid confirmed he visited Julia privately days before, their voices low, their manner intimate. "He cared for her," the maid said, "more than a doctor should." Poirot's mind catalogued this. An affair? A secret worth killing for? The ink smudge on Julia's wrist nagged at him, its indigo hue suggesting a fountain pen. Caruso carried one, as did Ricci. A coincidence, or a link to the note? Poirot stepped onto the palazzo's balcony, the canal below a ribbon of silver in the midday light. The gondolier's splash from Chapter 1 echoed in his thoughts. Had the necklace been discarded in haste? Or something else? A weapon, a letter, a confession? He resolved to search the canal at dusk, but first he needed more from the suspects. Their alibis were flimsy, their motives tangled. Isabella's jealousy, Marco's debts, Caruso's losses, Elena's inheritance, Ricci's affection. Each was a thread, but which led to murder? A servant interrupted, her hands trembling as she handed Poirot a sealed envelope, addressed to Julia in a hurried script. "It was delivered this morning, signore, before we knew." Poirot's pulse quickened as he broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet, its message stark. "Pay 10,000 lire, or your scandal is exposed, midnight, promenade." No signature, only the initials LC. Blackmail, then, had drawn Julia to her death. But who was LC? Luca Caruso or another? Poirot confronted Caruso, holding the letter aloft. "This, monsieur, bears your initials. Explain." Caruso's face darkened. "I wrote no such thing. Someone plays a cruel game." His denial was firm, but his eyes betrayed fear. Poirot tucked the letter away, sensing its weight. The note confirmed Julia's midnight meeting, but the blackmail source remained elusive. Was it Caruso, or a frame to divert suspicion? Isabella, overhearing, laughed sharply. Blackmail? Julia had secrets enough for 10 letters. Poirot turned to her. "And you, madame, what secrets do you hide?" Her smile faltered, but she said nothing. Elena, pale, whispered, "Julia was good to me. She didn't deserve this." Yet her tears seemed rehearsed, a performance for Poirot's benefit. Marco's gaze lingered on the letter, his hands twitching. Had he known of Julia's troubles? Ricci, silent until now, spoke softly. She was troubled, yes. I prescribed a sedative for her nerves. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A sedative, monsieur, strong enough to dull her senses." Ricci flushed, only to help her sleep. Poirot noted the evasion, another thread in the tapestry. The sapphire necklace, the blackmail letter, the ink smudge, the glove. Each clue pointed in multiple directions, a labyrinth of deceit. As Poirot prepared to leave for the canal, a maid approached, her voice low. "Signore, I found something in Signora Moretti's room." A diary, hidden under her pillow. She handed him a leather-bound book, its pages filled with Julia's elegant script. Poirot opened it, scanning entries. Marco begs for money again. Isabella's venom grows. Caruso threatens ruin. Elena disappoints. Ricci knows too much. Each name was a suspect, each entry a motive. But one line stood out. "The sapphire is my burden, but I cannot let it go." The diary deepened the mystery. Had Julia feared her killer? The reference to Ricci, "knows too much," suggested a secret beyond an affair. Poirot's grey cells hummed, piecing together the fragments, the blackmail letter, the diary, the missing necklace. The cloaked figure from the promenade loomed in his mind. Was it one of the 5, or an outsider watching from the shadows? The palazzo's clock chimed, pulling Poirot from his reverie. He pocketed the diary, his resolve firm. The canal awaited, its secrets perhaps key to unravelling the murder. As he descended the steps, a gondolier's shout echoed from the water, urgent and sharp. "Signore, something in the canal! It glints!" Poirot's heart raced. The splash, the glint had the killer left a trace. Chapter 3. The Blackmail Bargain. How 2,000 words will 20 jewels audio. The Grand Canal glittered under a noonday sun, its waters a restless mirror to Venice's secrets. Hercule Poirot stood on the balcony of Julia Moretti's palazzo, the blackmail letter in his gloved hand, its words searing his mind. "Pay 10,000 lire, or your scandal is exposed. Midnight, Promenade." The initials LC pointed to Luca Caruso, but Poirot's grey cells warned of deception. The diary, the torn glove, the ink smudge, the missing sapphire necklace, and the gondolier's splash swirled in his thoughts. A puzzle begging for order. The canal's ripples seemed to taunt him, hiding the truth beneath their surface. Pause for effect. Poirot re-entered the drawing room, where the suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti, and Dr. Antonio Ricci, waited under the weight of their secrets. Their faces, a gallery of unease, betrayed motives Poirot was determined to unravel. The blackmail letter clutched in his hand was a key, but to which lock? He held it aloft, his voice calm but piercing. "Mesdames et messieurs, this letter summoned Signora Moretti to her death. Who among you penned it?" Silence fell, heavy as the palazzo's chandeliers. Luca Caruso, his broad frame tense, broke the quiet. I wrote no such thing, Poirot. Those initials, someone plays a cruel trick. His gruff tone masked fear, and Poirot noted the sweat beading on his brow. Monsieur Caruso, you met Signora Moretti at the gala, oui? A business matter, you said. Yet her diary speaks of debts unpaid. Explain. Caruso's jaw tightened. She invested in my ships. It failed. She was angry, but I didn't kill her. His denial was fierce, but his eyes darted to the letter, a Tel Poirot catalogued. Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair catching the light, laughed sharply. Blackmail! Julia's scandals were hardly secret. Her lovers, her wealth, she flaunted them. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And you, madame, resented her prominence. Your argument last night, it was no trifling spat, no? Isabella's lips pursed. She mocked my family's honour. I despised her, but murder? Absurd. Her composure was a mask, one Poirot intended to crack. The torn glove, its embroidery matching her style, lingered in his mind. Was it hers or planted? Marco Bellini, Julia's lover, fidgeted, his paint-stained hands betraying nerves. I loved her, he said, his voice cracking. I'd never harm her. Poirot tilted his head. Love, monsieur, can be a motive as strong as hate. Your debts, they pressed heavily, oui? Marco flushed. She offered to help, but I refused. I'm no beggar. His passion was convincing, but Poirot noted his weak alibi, alone in his studio at the hour of the murder. Had he followed Julia to the promenade? Elena Vitti, pale and delicate, clutched her handkerchief, her eyes brimming. Julia was my mentor, she whispered. Why would I hurt her? Poirot's gaze softened, but his question was relentless. Mademoiselle, you left the palazzo at 4, seen by a footman. A walk, you said. Yet the promenade is near. Were you there? Elena's breath hitched. I needed air. I didn't see her. Her tears seemed genuine, but Poirot sensed a rehearsed fragility. Her inheritance loomed as a motive, stark and undeniable. Dr. Antonio Ricci, lingering at the room's edge, clutched his medical bag like a shield. I only cared for her health, he said, his voice unsteady. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And her heart, monsieur. You visited her privately, no? Her diary suggests you knew too much. Ricci paled. I prescribed sedatives for her nerves, nothing more. His tremor betrayed more than professional concern. An affair, perhaps? Or a secret Julia threatened to expose? Poirot's mind catalogued the possibility, a thread to tug later. Poirot excused himself to revisit the promenade, the scene of Julia's death. The cobblestones, now cleared of her body, gleamed under the sun, but the air held a chill, as if the mist lingered in spirit. He retraced his steps, the dagger's ornate hilt vivid in his memory, Venetian, antique, not a common killer's tool. Its precision suggested intent, not impulse. The ink smudge on Julia's wrist, indigo and fresh, hinted at a note or struggle. The torn glove, found near a bench, was a puzzle, its gold embroidery tied to Isabella, but her claim of theft rang plausible. Poirot sought the jeweller, Signore Vitale, whose card was found in Julia's purse. His shop, tucked in a narrow calle, smelled of polish and ambition. Vitale, a wiry man with sharp eyes, confirmed the sapphire necklace's value, 50,000 lire, insured, but rumoured to have a replica. A replica? Poirot pressed. Vitale nodded. Signora Moretti asked me to appraise it last week. She feared someone might steal the original. A red herring, or proof of premeditation. Had Julia suspected theft? Or was the replica a killer's ruse? The gondolier Pietro, lingering by his boat, approached Poirot. Signore, I remembered something. The cloaked figure, it moved like a man, heavy steps toward the Rialto. Poirot's moustache twitched. And the splash, monsieur? You heard it before the scream. Pietro nodded. Yes, near the old bridge. Poirot resolved to search the canal, but first he returned to the palazzo, the blackmail letter burning in his pocket. Its demand for 10,000 lire suggested a desperate motive, but whose? In Julia's study, Poirot examined the safe again, its scratch marks more pronounced in daylight. A servant, Maria, hovered nearby. Signore, I saw Contessa Rinaldi near the study last night, before the gala ended. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And what did she do, mademoiselle? Maria hesitated. She lingered by the tapestry, then left quickly. Was Isabella after the necklace, or planting evidence? The glove's presence in her style, yet stolen, suggested a frame, or her own carelessness. Poirot questioned Marco again, his studio a chaos of canvases, many depicting Julia. One sketch, hidden beneath others, showed her wearing the sapphire necklace, its clasp intact. You drew this recently, oui? Poirot asked. Marco nodded, uneasy. Days ago, she posed for me. The clasp's detail intrigued Poirot. If the necklace was stolen, why was it intact in the sketch? Had Marco seen it the night of the murder? His alibi, alone, painting, crumbled under scrutiny. Elena's diary, found by the maid, offered more clues. Poirot read further. Julia plans to change her will. I am betrayed. The entry, dated days before, confirmed Elena's motive, disinheritance for a charity. Confronted, Elena sobbed. She said I was ungrateful. I begged her to reconsider. Her desperation was palpable, but was it murderous? Poirot noted her access to Julia's rooms, her late-night walk, her fragile alibi. Caruso's business dealings with Julia, Poirot learned from a servant, involved a failed venture costing thousands. She threatened to ruin him, the servant whispered. He was furious at the gala. Poirot confronted Caruso, who admitted the loss but denied blackmail. I'd never stoop so low, he growled. Yet the initials LC on the letter pointed to him, or a clever impostor. Poirot's mind churned. Too many threads, too few connections. Ricci's sedatives, prescribed for Julia's nerves, raised suspicion. A pharmacist, questioned discreetly, confirmed the dose was unusually strong, enough to dull senses, not kill. Had Ricci drugged Julia to make her vulnerable? His private visits noted in the diary suggested intimacy. You loved her, monsieur, Poirot said softly. Ricci's eyes widened. I cared for her, yes, but only as a doctor. His denial was weak, a thread Poirot would pull later. The promenade beckoned again, its cobblestones now bustling with vendors and tourists. Poirot stood by the old bridge, where Pietro heard the splash. The canal's depths were murky, but the glint reported earlier suggested a clue. He hired a diver, a wiry youth, to search the water. As the boy descended, Poirot's thoughts returned to the suspects. Isabella's glove, Marco's sketch, Elena's diary, Caruso's initials, Ricci's sedatives, each was a piece, but the pattern eluded him. The diva surfaced empty-handed, but reported a glint too deep to reach without equipment. Poirot's frustration grew, tempered by his resolve. The splash, the glint, something had been discarded, perhaps the necklace, perhaps evidence. He recalled the diary's words, Ricci knows too much. What did Julia know, and why did it cost her life? The blackmail letter suggested a secret worth killing for. But whose? Back at the palazzo, Poirot gathered the suspects, their tension palpable. Mesdames et messieurs, the truth is near. The letter, the diary, the glove. They point to a killer among you. Isabella scoffed. Marco paled. Caruso glared. Elena wept. Ricci trembled. Poirot watched their reactions, his grey cells cataloguing each flinch. The diary's mention of betrayal and debts suggested multiple motives, but the blackmail letter's midnight meeting was the key. A maid approached, her voice low. "Signore, I found something in the garden. A fountain pen, dropped near the gate." Poirot examined it. Indigo ink, matching the smudge on Julia's wrist. Its monogram read, A.R., Antonio Ricci. Confronted, Ricci stammered, "I lost it days ago. Someone took it." Another red herring or damning evidence? Poirot's mind raced, the puzzle sharpening. The canal's glint nagged at him. He arranged for a second dive at dusk, determined to retrieve the clue. The suspects, dismissed for now, dispersed, their alibis fraying. Isabella's stolen glove, Marco's sketch, Elena's walk, Caruso's initials, Ricci's pen, each was a thread, but the tapestry was incomplete. Poirot sensed the killer's desperation, the blackmail a catalyst for murder. As he prepared to leave, a gunshot rang out, shattering the palazzo's quiet. Glass sprayed from a window, and the suspects froze, their eyes wide. Poirot, unruffled, stepped toward the sound, his cane tapping rhythmically. "The killer grows bold," he murmured, his grey cells alight. The shot, aimed at no one, was a warning or a distraction. Chapter 4. The Echo of the Shot. 2,000 words, beats and 20 gigahertz audio. The gunshot's echo lingered in the air, sharp and discordant against the Grand Canal's gentle lapping. Hercule Poirot stood motionless in Giulia Moretti's palazzo, his keen eyes scanning the shattered window where glass glittered like scattered stars on the marble floor. The suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti, and Dr. Antonio Ricci, froze, their faces a canvas of shock and suspicion. The shot fired from the garden had struck no one, but its intent was clear. A warning, a distraction, or a desperate act. Poirot's moustache twitched, his grey cells alight with possibility. The blackmail letter, the diary, the fountain pen, and the canal's elusive glint swirled in his mind, threads in a tapestry of murder yet to be woven whole. Pause for effect. Poirot stepped toward the broken window, his cane tapping rhythmically, unruffled by the chaos. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice a calm anchor. "The killer grows bold, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily deterred." He examined the window's jagged edges, noting the bullet's trajectory. High, aimed to frighten rather than kill. Outside, the garden lay quiet, its rose bushes and statues bathed in the pale light of a Venetian afternoon. Footprints, faint in the damp earth, led toward the canal gate. A clue, perhaps, but too vague to name a culprit. The constable, summoned by a servant, arrived breathless, his young face flushed with urgency. "Signore Poirot, no one was seen in the garden, but we're searching the Calais." Poirot nodded, his mind elsewhere. The shot was no random act. It was timed, theatrical, meant to disrupt his gathering of the suspects. He turned to them, their eyes darting. Isabella's cold, Marco's haunted, Caruso's defiant, Elena's tearful, Ricci's nervous. "One of you," Poirot said softly, "knows more than you admit. The truth, it will not hide forever." Poirot began with Dr. Antonio Ricci, whose monogrammed fountain pen, found in the garden, matched the indigo ink on Giulia's wrist. "Monsieur Ricci, this pen, it is yours, oui? Lost, you claim, yet found near a gunshot." Ricci's hands trembled. His medical bag clutched tightly. "I told you, it was stolen days ago. Someone uses it to frame me." His voice cracked, and Poirot noted the desperation. Had Ricci drugged Giulia with sedatives, then killed her to silence a scandal? The diary's words, Ricci knows too much, burned in Poirot's memory. Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair a stark contrast to her pale composure, scoffed. A pen? A gunshot? This is melodrama, Poirot, not evidence. Her tone was imperious, but her glance toward the window betrayed unease. Madame, Poirot countered, your glove, found at the scene, also suggests melodrama. Stolen, you say, yet its embroidery is yours. Isabella's lips pursed. I am no thief, nor a murderer. Julia's enemies were legion. Her rivalry, rooted in a public humiliation years ago, was motive enough, but the glove's planting hinted at another's hand. Marco Bellini, Julia's lover, stood by a portrait of her, his paint-stained hands clenched. I was in my studio when the shot was fired, he said, unprompted, his voice raw. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And at 5 this morning, monsieur, when Signora Moretti died? Your studio. It is conveniently solitary. Marco's gaze dropped. I told you, I was painting. Julia. She was everything to me. His debts, whispered among the servants, painted a different picture. A man desperate for her wealth. The sketch of Julia, its necklace clasp intact, suggested he knew more than he admitted. Elena Vitti, fragile in her mourning dress, wept softly. Why does this keep happening? She murmured, her handkerchief twisting in her hands. Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. Mademoiselle, your walk at 4, so near the promenade. Did you see Signora Moretti or her killer? Elena shook her head, tears spilling. I saw nothing. I was upset, walking to clear my mind. Her diary's entry, Julia plans to change her will, confirmed her fear of disinheritance. Was her grief genuine, or a mask for murder? Luca Caruso, the shipping magnate, glowered from the room's edge, his broad frame tense. This is nonsense, he growled. I was in my office, far from here, when that shot rang out. Poirot tilted his head. And the blackmail letter, monsieur, with your initials. It summoned Signora Moretti to her death. Caruso's face darkened. I told you it's not mine. Someone toys with us all. His failed venture with Julia, costing thousands, gave him motive to silence her threats of exposure. Yet his denial rang with a hint of truth. Or was it practiced? Poirot excused the suspects, instructing them to remain in the palazzo. He descended to the garden, where the constable's men searched for clues. The footprints leading to the canal gate were smudged, likely a man's, but the damp earth offered little else. Poirot's thoughts returned to the canal, where the gondolier Pietro's reported glint awaited retrieval. The diver's failure earlier suggested deeper waters, or deliberate concealment. Had the killer discarded evidence, a weapon, the necklace, or something more damning? Returning to Julia's study, Poirot re-examined the safe, its scratch marks a silent accusation. A servant, Maria, lingered nearby, her eyes nervous. Signore, I remembered something. Signora Moretti, she argued with Signore Caruso at the gala, near the balcony. He was angry, said she'd regret crossing him. Poirot's moustache twitched. And did you hear more, mademoiselle? Maria hesitated. Only that she mentioned a letter. Something about debts paid in blood. The blackmail letter, then, was no surprise to Julia. But had it come from Caruso, or another? Poirot sought the jeweller Vitale again. His shop, a haven of glittering gems. Vitale confirmed the sapphire necklace's replica, crafted at Julia's request. She feared theft, he said, but never wore the replica. The original was on her last night. Poirot's mind raced. If the necklace was not stolen, why was it missing? Had the killer taken it as a trophy, or to fuel the curse's myth? The replica's existence was a red herring, muddying the motive of theft. Back at the palazzo, Poirot questioned Marco's sketches, found in his studio. One, hidden beneath a cloth, depicted Julia with a dagger, not in her chest but at her side as if posed. "You saw this dagger, monsieur?" Poirot asked, his voice sharp. Marco paled. I drew it from memory. She showed it to me once, said it was a family heirloom." The lie was thin. The dagger's presence at the crime scene suggested Marco's involvement or his witnessing of the act. Elena's diary, reread in the study's quiet, revealed more. Julia suspects betrayal. She trusts no one, not even me. The entry, dated the day before her death, hinted at paranoia or insight. Had Julia uncovered her killer's plan? Poirot confronted Elena, her face crumpling. "She accused me of ingratitude," Elena admitted. "I was angry, but I didn't kill her." Her walk near the promenade, her access to Julia's rooms, her motive of inheritance, all pointed to opportunity, if not guilt. Ricci's sedatives, Poirot learned from the pharmacist, were potent enough to cause drowsiness, even disorientation. Enough to make her vulnerable, oui? Poirot mused aloud. Ricci, overhearing, protested. "I only meant to help her sleep. She was anxious, tormented." His passion suggested more than a doctor's care. The diary's note, "Ricci knows too much," implied a secret, perhaps an affair, that Julia threatened to expose. Was the pen found in the garden his or planted to frame him? Caruso's alibi for the gala's end was shaky. A servant saw him leave the palazzo at midnight, toward the promenade. "Business," he claimed, but refused to elaborate. Poirot pressed. "Business with Signora Moretti, perhaps? A meeting arranged by this letter?" Caruso's silence was damning, his motive of financial ruin growing clearer. Yet the initials LC could be a ruse, deflecting blame from another. Isabella's glove, Poirot discovered, bore traces of Julia's perfume, confirmed by a maid. "She wore it often," the maid said, "but not last night." Had Isabella been at the scene, or was the glove planted? Her rivalry with Julia, rooted in a long-ago slight, burned fiercely. "She stole my place in society," Isabella admitted when pressed, "but I'd not dirty my hands with her blood." Her pride was a shield, but Poirot sensed cracks. The canal search resumed at dusk, the diver equipped with better tools. Poirot stood by the old bridge, the water's surface a dark mirror. The gunshot's echo lingered in his thoughts, a distraction meant to scare him or another. The footprints in the garden suggested a man, but whose? Marco's debts, Caruso's losses, Ricci's secrets, all fit, yet none perfectly. The glint in the canal, if retrieved, might shift the puzzle's pieces. A servant's whisper interrupted Poirot's reverie. "Signore, I found a key in Signora Moretti's room, hidden in a jewellery box." The key, small and ornate, matched the study's safe. Poirot's pulse quickened. Had Julia hidden something vital? He returned to the safe, the key turning smoothly. Inside was a single letter, unsealed, in Julia's hand. "If I die, the truth lies with the one who watches." The phrase echoed the sketch's warning, chilling Poirot's blood. The letter's implications were vast. Did Julia know her killer? The one who watches suggested a hidden observer, perhaps the cloaked figure, perhaps a suspect among them. Poirot gathered the suspects again, their faces pale under the chandelier's glow. "This letter," he said, holding it aloft, "confirms Signora Moretti feared betrayal. One of you watched her, waited, and struck." Their reactions, Isabella's sneer, Marco's flinch, Caruso's scowl, Elena's gasp, Ricci's tremor, were a study in guilt and fear. The diver's shout broke the tension. "Signore, I've found it!" Poirot rushed to the canal, where the youth held a glinting object, a sapphire, detached from its necklace, its clasp broken. The original, not the replica confirmed by its weight and cut. Poirot's mind raced. The necklace was not stolen, but broken in a struggle. Julia had worn it, fought her killer, and lost. The sapphire was a clue, but to what? Back in the palazzo, Poirot confronted the suspects with the sapphire. This was no theft, he said. The killer sought something else. Silence, perhaps, or revenge. Isabella's eyes flickered. Marco's hands shook. Caruso's jaw tightened. Elena wept. Ricci stared at the floor. The letter, the sapphire, the pen, the glove, each pointed to a truth Poirot was closing in on. But the gunshot's warning lingered, a sign the killer was not done. 19. As night fell, a scream pierced the palazzo, shrill and urgent, from the upper floors. Poirot's cane tapped swiftly as he ascended, the suspects trailing, their fear palpable. The scream came from Maria, the servant, standing in Julia's bedroom, pointing to a bloodied scarf on the floor. "It wasn't here before!" she cried. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand lifting the scarf. The blood was fresh, its scent sharp. Chapter 5. The Second Shadow. 2,000 words, die 20.000 audio. The scream tore through the palazzo like a crack in Venice's ancient stones, its echo mingling with the distant lapping of the Grand Canal. Hercule Poirot ascended the marble staircase with measured steps, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, his grey cells alight with the weight of new evidence. The bloodied scarf, found in Julia Moretti's bedroom. The sapphire, from her necklace, retrieved from the canal, gleamed in his pocket, its broken clasp a testament to a struggle. The blackmail letter, the diary, the fountain pen, the torn glove, and the gunshot's warning swirled in his mind, each a thread in a tapestry of betrayal. The servant Maria's cry had summoned him, and now, as he reached the bedroom, the suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti, and Dr. Antonio Ricci, trailed behind, their faces pale with dread. Pause for effect. The bedroom, bathed in the soft glow of a chandelier, was a shrine to Julia's elegance. Silk drapes, gilded mirrors, a four-poster bed draped in velvet. Maria stood trembling, pointing to the scarf, its crimson stains stark against the polished floor. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand lifting the fabric. The blood was fresh, its metallic scent sharp, but the scarf bore no monogram, no clear owner. "Mademoiselle," he said to Maria, his voice calm but piercing, "when did you last enter this room?" Maria stammered, "This morning, signore, to clean. It wasn't there." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Another crime, or a planted clue to deepen the mystery? The suspects crowded the doorway, their breaths uneven. Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair catching the light, scoffed. "Another trick, Poirot. This is no murder scene." Her tone was imperious, but her glance toward the scarf betrayed unease. Poirot turned to her. "Madame, the blood, it is real, and the killer, they grow reckless." Marco Bellini, his paint-stained hands trembling, stared at the scarf. "Julia's ghost," he murmured, his voice hollow. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Ghosts, monsieur, do not bleed. The living, they make better suspects." Poirot dismissed the suspects to the drawing-room, instructing the constable to guard the scarf. He lingered in Julia's bedroom, his eyes scanning for anomalies. A jewellery box left ajar held no sapphires but revealed a hidden compartment. Empty, save for a faint trace of indigo ink. The smudge on Julia's wrist, the fountain pen with Ricci's initials. And now this compartment suggested a pattern. Had Julia hidden a note, or had the killer taken it? The diary's words, "Ricci knows too much," echoed, pointing to a secret worth killing for. Downstairs, Poirot questioned Maria further. "You heard a scream, oui? From where exactly?" Maria pointed to the ceiling. "Upstairs, signore, near the attic. I thought it was a cat, but then I found the scarf." The attic, rarely used, was a new thread to explore. Poirot noted Maria's fear. She knew more than she said. "And Signora Moretti, she was anxious before her death?" Maria nodded. "She spoke of betrayal, signore. Said someone watched her, always watching." The phrase mirrored the sketch's warning, "Beware the one who watches." In the drawing room, Poirot confronted Elena Vitti, whose diary revealed her fear of disinheritance. "Mademoiselle, Julia's betrayal, changing her will, it hurt you deeply, non?" Elena's eyes brimmed with tears. "She called me ungrateful, said I'd get nothing, but I loved her." Her walk near the promenade, her access to Julia's rooms made her a suspect, yet her grief seemed genuine. Poirot pressed. "You found a key to her safe, oui? What did you seek?" Elena paled. "She gave it to me, to protect her papers. I didn't open it." Her denial wavered, a crack in her facade. Luca Caruso, his broad frame filling a chair, glowered. "This scarf, this letter, it's all a game to frame me." Poirot held up the blackmail letter with its LC initials. "Monsieur, your business with Signora Moretti was troubled. She threatened to expose your losses, oui?" Caruso's jaw tightened. "She was unreasonable, but I didn't kill her. That letter isn't mine." His anger was convincing, but the initials nagged at Poirot. A red herring, or a direct link? Isabella Rinaldi, her silk gown rustling, dismissed the scarf. Blood? Anyone could have placed it there. Julia's enemies were many. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting, and you, madame, were foremost among them. Your glove, your rivalry, both point to you. Isabella's laugh was sharp. "My glove was stolen, as I said. Someone wants me blamed." The perfume on the glove, matching Julia's, suggested proximity to the crime, but Isabella's claim of theft held a ring of truth, or cunning. Marco Bellini, his dark eyes haunted, avoided the scarf's gaze. "I painted her, loved her, not this." Poirot held up the sketch of Julia with the dagger. "This, monsieur, you drew from memory, or from sight. You saw the dagger at the scene, no?" Marco's hands shook. "She showed it to me once, a keepsake. I didn't kill her." His weak alibi, alone in his studio, crumbled further, and the sketch's precision suggested he witnessed more than he admitted. Dr. Antonio Ricci, clutching his medical bag, was pale. "The scarf! It's not mine," he stammered. Poirot's voice was soft but sharp. "And the pen, monsieur, with your initials? Found near a gunshot, linked to the ink on Signora Moretti's wrist." Ricci's tremor worsened. "I told you, it was stolen. I cared for her, yes, but only as a doctor." The diary's hint of a secret, "Ricci knows too much," suggested an affair, or something darker. Had Julia threatened to expose him? Poirot returned to the promenade, the canal's surface now dark under a twilight sky. The sapphire, its clasp broken, confirmed a struggle, not theft. He recalled the gondolier Pietro's tale of a cloaked figure, moving heavily toward the Rialto. A man, perhaps, Caruso, Marco, or Ricci. The splash, the glint, and now the scarf suggested the killer's haste, leaving clues in their wake. Poirot arranged for another canal search at dawn, determined to retrieve what lay below. Back at the palazzo, Poirot explored the attic, guided by Maria's scream. The narrow stairs creaked, the air heavy with dust and secrets. A single window overlooked the canal, its latch loose, suggesting recent use. A scuff mark on the floor, in the shape of a boot, matched the garden footprints. Someone had been here. perhaps watching Julia's room below. The one who watches loomed larger, a shadow within a shadow. Poirot questioned the servants, piecing together the gala's events. A footman saw Isabella near Julia's study, lingering by the safe. "She looked nervous, signore," he said. Another servant recalled Marco pleading with Julia for money, his voice desperate. Caruso's argument, overheard by Maria, involved threats of ruin. Elena was seen slipping out at 4, her face pale. Ricci, the footman noted, gave Julia a glass of wine, insisting it would calm her. Each detail tightened the web, but the killer's identity remained elusive. The scarf's blood, sent to a chemist, was confirmed as human, but whose? Julia's body, examined post-mortem, showed no fresh wounds beyond the dagger's strike. Was the scarf a new crime, or a relic of the murder? Poirot's mind returned to the letter in the safe. "If I die, the truth lies with the one who watches." The phrase suggested Julia knew her killer, or suspected betrayal. The sketch, the letter, the scarf, each pointed to a hidden observer, perhaps among the suspects. Poirot confronted Isabella again, her composure fraying. "Madame, you were seen near the study, near the safe. What did you seek?" Isabella's eyes flashed. "I sought nothing. I was curious, that's all." Her evasion was telling. Her rivalry with Julia, a burning motive. The glove, perfumed with Julia's scent, placed her near the crime, but its theft suggested a frame, or her own cunning. Marco's studio, revisited, revealed another sketch, tucked behind a canvas. Julia, on the promenade, a cloaked figure behind her. "You saw this, monsieur?" Poirot asked, his voice sharp. Marco stammered. "A dream, nothing more." His lie was palpable, his presence at the scene increasingly likely. Had he watched or acted? His debts, his love, his sketches, all pointed to involvement, but as victim or villain? Elena's tears, when questioned, turned to defiance. "I didn't kill her, but she hurt me. That will, it was cruel." Her access to the safe's key, her late-night walk, her diary's betrayal made her a suspect, yet her fragility suggested innocence, or a masterful act. Poirot noted her closeness to Ricci, their glances too familiar. Was she complicit, or merely manipulated? Caruso's alibi for the gunshot was weak, his office he claimed, but no witnesses confirmed it. "I don't need to shoot to make a point," he growled. Yet his losses, tied to Julia's threats, gave him reason to silence her. The blackmail letter's initials, though possibly a ruse, kept him in Poirot's sights. Ricci's sedatives, confirmed as potent, suggested he dulled Julia's senses before her death, making her an easy target. The attic's scuff mark nagged at Poirot. He compared it to the suspect's boots. Caruso's were closest in size, but Marco's were mud-stained, suggesting recent outdoor movement. Ricci's shoes, polished, were clean, but his nervous demeanor betrayed guilt. Isabella's heels ruled her out, but Helena's small boots could fit if she'd changed shoes. The one who watches was close, perhaps among them, perhaps hidden. Poirot arranged a gathering at the palazzo that night, determined to press the suspects further. The scarf, the sapphire, the letter, the pen, each clue tightened the noose, but the killer's identity danced just out of reach. He sensed a pattern: Julia's paranoia, her diary's warnings, the blackmail's demand. She had confronted her killer and paid the price. But who? As he prepared to leave, a gondolier's shout echoed from the canal. "Signore! Another glint deeper in the water!" Poirot rushed to the bridge, his heart racing. The diver, resurfacing, held nothing but mud, but swore the glint was real, a knife, perhaps, or a jewel. Poirot's resolve hardened. The canal held the key, and he would not rest until it was his. 19. Back in the palazzo, the suspects gathered, their tension a palpable fog. Poirot stood before them, the scarf in one hand, the sapphire in the other. "The truth," he said, "is near. One of you watched, waited, and struck, but the canal, it will not lie." As he spoke, a window shattered, glass spraying across the room. A figure, cloaked, fled into the night, a shadow vanishing into Venice's maze. Chapter 6. The Shattered Window. 2,000 words, shall 20 dad audio. The crash of the shattered window reverberated through Giulia Moretti's palazzo, a jagged note in the symphony of Venice's twilight. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hall, his sharp eyes fixed on the splintered glass scattered across the marble floor, glinting like the sapphire in his pocket. The fleeing figure, cloaked and swift, had vanished into the labyrinth of canals and cols, leaving only questions in their wake. The bloodied scarf, the blackmail letter, the diary, the fountain pen, and the canal's elusive glint swirled in Poirot's mind, each a fragment of a puzzle growing ever more intricate. The suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti, and Dr. Antonio Ricci, stood frozen, their faces a gallery of fear and suspicion. The air was thick with the scent of wax and roses, undercut by the tang of danger. Pause for effect. Poirot stepped toward the broken window, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, unruffled by the chaos. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice a calm beacon, "the killer strikes again, not with a bullet, but with fear." Yet Hercule Poirot sees through such theatrics. He examined the shards, noting a high brick wrapped in a note. "Stop or die." The script was hurried, the ink indigo, matching the smudge on Giulia's wrist and Ricci's pen. A warning, meant to halt his investigation or to divert it. Poirot's grey cells hummed, cataloguing the threat as another thread in the tapestry of murder. The constable, summoned by a servant, arrived panting, his young face flushed. "Signore Poirot, we searched the Calais, no trace of the figure, but we found this." He held a torn cloak fragment, coarse wool, caught on a garden gate. Poirot turned it over, noting a faint scent of tobacco. "A man's cloak, perhaps," he murmured, his mind racing. Caruso smoked, as did Marco. Ricci's habits were less clear. The fragment was a clue, but too vague to name a culprit. "Search the canal again," Poirot instructed. "The glint, it must be found." Poirot gathered the suspects in the drawing-room, their tension palpable under the chandelier's glow. He held up the brick's note. "This, mes amis, is a desperate act. One of you seeks to silence me, but the truth, it will not be silenced." Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair a fiery crown, scoffed. "A childish prank, Poirot. You waste our time." Her tone was imperious, but her glance toward the window betrayed unease. "Madam," Poirot countered, "your glove, your presence near the safe, nothing is childish in murder." The glove, perfumed with Giulia's scent, placed her near the crime, but its theft suggested a frame, or her cunning. Marco Bellini, his paint-stained hands trembling, stared at the note. "I was in my studio, I swear," he said, unprompted. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, monsieur, your sketches show Giulia with the dagger, the necklace, details too precise for imagination. You saw her death, non?" Marco's face crumpled. "I loved her. I'd never hurt her." His debts, whispered among the servants, painted a motive of desperation. And his weak alibi, alone, painting, crumbled further. The sketch of the cloaked figure behind Giulia suggested he witnessed the crime, or staged it. Elena Vitti, fragile in her morning dress, clutched her handkerchief, her eyes brimming. "Why does this keep happening?" she whispered. Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, your diary speaks of betrayal. Your walk near the promenade places you at the scene. Did you see the cloaked figure?" Elena's breath hitched. "I saw nothing. I was upset, walking to clear my mind." Her access to the safe's key, her fear of disinheritance, made her a suspect. Yet her tears seemed genuine, or artfully rehearsed. Luca Caruso, his broad frame tense, glowered. "This note, this cloak, it's all to frame me." Poirot held up the blackmail letter with its LC initials. "Monsieur, your losses with Signora Moretti were great. She threatened to ruin you, oui?" Caruso's jaw tightened. "I told you that letter's not mine. I was in my office when the window broke." His alibi was unconfirmed, his motive of financial ruin stark. The tobacco scent on the cloak fragment pointed to him, but so did it to others, a red herring perhaps. Dr. Antonio Ricci, clutching his medical bag, was pale. "I know nothing of this note or cloak," he stammered. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And your pen, monsieur? Found in the garden. Its ink on Signora Moretti's wrist? Your sedatives dulled her senses before her death." Ricci's tremor worsened. "I cared for her, yes, but I didn't kill her. The pen was stolen." The diary's hint, "Ricci knows too much," suggested an affair, or a secret Julia threatened to expose. His nervousness was a thread Poirot would pull. Poirot excused the suspects, instructing them to remain in the palazzo. He returned to Julia's bedroom, where the bloodied scarf lay under the constable's watch. A chemist's report confirmed the blood was Julia's, likely from her fatal wound, but its placement in the bedroom was new. Had the killer returned to plant it, or had it been overlooked? Poirot examined the jewellery box's hidden compartment again, finding a faint scratch inside, as if something small, a note, a key, had been removed. The one who watches loomed in his thoughts, a shadow within the palazzo. Poirot ascended to the attic, where the scuff mark from a boot hinted at a watcher. The window, overlooking the canal, was unlatched, its view encompassing Julia's bedroom below. Had someone spied on her, plotting her death? The cloak fragment's tobacco scent suggested a man, but Isabella's cunning could not be dismissed. Poirot's mind catalogued the clues: the scarf, the sapphire, the letter, the pen, the note, the cloak. Each pointed to a killer desperate to cover their tracks. A servant, Maria, approached, her voice low. "Signore, I saw Signore Caruso near the attic stairs last night, after the gala. He looked angry." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And what did he do, mademoiselle?" Maria hesitated. "He paced, then left quickly. I thought he was drunk." Caruso's presence in the attic, his failed venture with Julia, and the blackmail letter's initials tightened his place in the web. But was he the watcher, or another pawn? Poirot revisited Marco's studio, its chaos of canvases a mirror to the artist's turmoil. A hidden sketch, tucked behind a portrait, showed Julia on the promenade, the cloaked figure closer, its hand raised. "You saw this, monsieur," Poirot said, confronting Marco. "A dream, you claimed, but this is no dream." Marco's face crumpled. "I saw her that night, yes, arguing with someone, cloaked, near the bridge. I ran fearing blame." His admission placed him at the scene, but as witness or killer? Elena's diary, reread in the study's quiet, revealed another entry. "Julia suspects me, but she's wrong. The real threat watches from above." The attic, then, was key. Poirot confronted Elena, her tears turning to defiance. "She accused me of betrayal. But I was loyal. I didn't kill her. Her walk near the promenade, her key to the safe, her motive of inheritance, all pointed to guilt, yet her fear of the watcher suggested another's hand. Isabella's alibi for the gala's end was weak. She claimed a late-night walk, alone, unsupported. "I needed air," she said, her voice cool. Poirot pressed. "And this walk, madame, took you near the promenade, where Signora Moretti died?" Isabella's eyes flashed. "I was nowhere near her. Someone uses my glove to frame me." Her rivalry, her presence near the safe, her stolen glove, all suggested involvement, but the cloak fragment's masculine scent pointed elsewhere. Caruso's tobacco habit, confirmed by a servant, matched the cloak fragment, but Marco smoked too, and Ricci's habits were unclear. Poirot questioned Caruso again. "Your argument with Signora Moretti, your presence in the attic, explain, monsieur." Caruso's scowl deepened. "I argued, yes, but I left the palazzo at midnight. I didn't kill her." His alibi, like Marco's, was solitary, unverified, his motive of financial ruin stark. Ricci's sedatives, Poirot learned, were administered hours before Julia's death, enough to dull her senses, making her vulnerable. "You drugged her, monsieur," Poirot said softly. Ricci protested. "I only helped her sleep. She was tormented." His passion suggested an affair, confirmed by a maid's whisper. "They met privately, signore, in her room." The diary's note, "Ricci knows too much," implied a secret worth killing for. Was Ricci the watcher, or another victim of the frame? Poirot returned to the canal, where the diver prepared another search. The glint, still unretrieved, nagged at him. A knife, a jewel, or a confession? The cloak fragment, the brick's note, the scarf's blood, all pointed to a killer growing desperate. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the pattern. Julia's paranoia, her confrontation with her blackmailer, the struggle on the promenade. The one who watches was key, but who? A servant's discovery deepened the mystery. "Signore, I found this in the attic, a cigarette butt still warm." Poirot examined it, its tobacco matching the cloak's scent. Caruso, Marco, or another? The attic's role as a vantage point suggested the killer spied on Julia, perhaps planning the murder from above. Poirot's grey cells churned, the clues aligning but not yet complete. He gathered the suspects again. The shattered window, a stark reminder of danger. "The watcher," Poirot said, "saw Signora Moretti's every move. One of you stood in the attic, waited, and struck." Isabella sneered. Marco flinched. Caruso glared. Elena wept. Ricci trembled. Their reactions were a study in guilt, but the truth remained elusive. The sapphire's broken clasp, the scarf's blood, the letter's warning, all pointed to a struggle, a betrayal, a murder. As Poirot prepared to press further, a gondolier's whistle pierced the night, urgent and sharp. "Signore! The canal! It yields something!" Poirot rushed to the bridge, the suspects trailing, their fear palpable. The diver surfaced, holding a glinting object, a dagger, its blade stained, its hilt matching the one in Julia's chest. A second weapon, or a decoy? Chapter 7. The Canal's Secret. 2,000 words, 20 Shiller audio. The gondolier's whistle cut through the Venetian night, sharp and urgent, as Hercule Poirot stood on the old bridge overlooking the Grand Canal. The diver's hand broke the water's surface, clutching a glinting dagger, its blade stained with dried blood, its hilt a twin to the one that pierced Julia Moretti's heart. The palazzo behind him, its windows aglow, seemed to hold its breath as the suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti, and Dr. Antonio Ricci, gathered at the canal's edge, their faces etched with dread. The sapphire, the bloodied scarf, the blackmail letter, the fountain pen, the cloak fragment, and now this second dagger swirled in Poirot's mind, threads in a tapestry of murder growing ever clearer. The canal, it seemed, was ready to yield its secrets. Pause for effect. Poirot took the dagger from the diver, his gloved fingers tracing its ornate hilt. Venetian, antique, identical to the murder weapon. Mon Dieu, he murmured, a second dagger or a decoy? The blood, crusted and dark, suggested it was used, but was it Julia's? The suspect's eyes followed his every move, their silence heavy with guilt or fear. Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair catching the lantern's glow, broke the quiet. Another trick, Poirot. This proves nothing. Her tone was imperious, but her glance toward the dagger betrayed unease. Poirot turned to the constable, hovering nearby. Monsieur, have this blade tested for blood. We must know if it matches Signora Moretti's. The constable nodded, scurrying off with the dagger. Poirot's gaze returned to the suspects, his voice calm but piercing. Mesdames et messieurs, the canal does not lie. This dagger, like the sapphire, tells of a struggle. One of you struck, then discarded evidence in haste. Marco Bellini flinched, his paint-stained hands trembling. Caruso's scowl deepened. Elena's tears fell. Ricci's face paled, and Isabella's lips tightened, a gallery of suspicion. Poirot led the suspects back to the palazzo, the night air thick with salt and secrets. The dagger's discovery shifted the puzzle's pieces, suggesting a killer's attempt to mislead. Was it a second weapon, used in the murder, or a red herring planted to confuse? The sapphire's broken clasp found earlier confirmed Julia fought her killer, but the scarf's blood, the cloak fragment, and the brick's warning, "Stop or die," pointed to a desperate mind. Poirot's grey cells churned, seeking the pattern that would unmask the truth. In the drawing room, under the chandelier's golden glow, Poirot confronted Marco Bellini. Monsieur, your sketch showed a cloaked figure, a dagger at Signora Moretti's side. You were there, oui? Marco's eyes widened, his voice raw. I saw her, yes, arguing near the promenade, but I ran. I feared they'd blame me. His admission placed him at the scene, but as witness or killer, his debts, whispered among the servants, and his weak alibi, alone in his studio, tightened the noose, yet his grief seemed genuine. Elena Vitti, clutching her handkerchief, sobbed, I didn't do this. Julia was my mentor. Poirot's gaze softened, but his question was relentless. Mademoiselle, your diary speaks of betrayal. She planned to disinherit you. You had her key, her trust. Did you use it to betray her? Elena's breath hitched. I forged a letter, yes, to scare her into keeping me in her will. But murder, never. Her confession to forging a blackmail letter was a bombshell, yet her tears suggested innocence, or a masterful performance. Luca Caruso, his broad frame tense, growled, This is madness, that dagger, that letter. It's all to frame me. Poirot held up the blackmail letter with its LC initials. Monsieur, your losses with Signora Moretti were great. She threatened to ruin you, no? Caruso's jaw clenched. I argued with her. Yes, but I didn't write that letter. Someone uses my name. The tobacco scent on the cloak fragment matched his habit, but Marco smoked too, and the initials could be a ruse. Poirot noted Caruso's fury, a mask for fear or guilt. Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, her silk gown rustling, dismissed the dagger. A second blade? Someone plays games, Poirot. Her voice was cool, but her eyes darted to the canal. Madam, Poirot countered. Your glove, perfumed with Signora Moretti's scent, places you at the scene. Stolen, you claim, yet you lingered near her safe. Isabella's laugh was sharp. I told you it was taken weeks ago. Someone wants me blamed. Her rivalry with Julia, rooted in a public slight, burned fiercely, but the glove's planting suggested another's hand. Dr. Antonio Ricci, his medical bag a shield, stammered, I know nothing of daggers or scarves. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. Monsieur, your pen, your sedatives, your private visits, Signora Moretti's diary says you knew too much. What secret did she hold over you? Ricci's tremor worsened. I cared for her, yes, but only as a doctor. The pen was stolen, the sedatives mild. His denial was weak, and the diary's hint of an affair, or darker knowledge, made him a prime suspect. Poirot excused the suspects, retreating to Julia's study to ponder the dagger. Its hilt, identical to the murder weapon, suggested a pair, perhaps a collector's set, sold to one of the suspects. He recalled the jeweller Vitale's words. The dagger was purchased anonymously weeks before. A lead, but a faint one. The sapphire's broken clasp found in the canal confirmed a struggle, not theft. Julia wore the original necklace, not the replica, ruling out robbery as motive. The scarf's blood, the cloak fragment, the brick's note, all pointed to a killer covering their tracks. A servant, Maria, approached, her voice low. Signore, I saw Signore Bellini arguing with Signora Moretti hours before her death near the promenade. He was desperate. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And what did they say, mademoiselle? Maria hesitated. He begged for money, said he'd lose everything. She refused, said he'd betrayed her trust. Marco's motive, debts and rejection, grew stark, his presence at the scene confirmed by his own admission. But was he the cloaked figure, or a witness? Poirot revisited the attic, its dusty air heavy with secrets. The scuff mark, the unlatched window, and now the cigarette butt suggested a watcher's perch. The tobacco matched Caruso's brand, but Marco's mud-stained boots hinted at recent movement. Poirot examined the window's view, Julia's bedroom, the promenade, the canal, all visible. The one who watches, noted in the diary and sketch, was no metaphor. Someone had spied, planned, and struck. But who? A maid's discovery deepened the mystery. Signore, I found this in Signora Moretti's wardrobe, a letter hidden in a sleeve. Poirot opened it, his pulse quickening. In Julia's script it read, Antonio, your secret is safe, but I cannot forgive. Meet me at midnight. Addressed to Ricci, it confirmed an affair or something deeper. Had Julia threatened to expose him, prompting murder? Poirot confronted Ricci, who paled. She knew of my feelings, he admitted, but I didn't meet her. I was home. His alibi, like Marco's, was solitary, unverified. Elena's confession to forging a blackmail letter shifted Poirot's focus. Mademoiselle, you wrote to scare her, oui, but did you meet her on the promenade? Elena's eyes widened. No, I sent the letter, but I didn't go, I swear. Her motive, securing her inheritance, was potent, but her fear of the watcher suggested another's involvement. Poirot noted her closeness to Ricci, their glances too familiar. Were they conspirators, or was she manipulated? Isabella's presence near the safe, reported by Maria, raised suspicion. Madame, you sought something, perhaps the necklace, or papers to ruin Signora Moretti. Isabella's eyes flashed. I was curious, nothing more. I didn't touch her safe. Her glove, perfumed and torn, placed her near the crime, but its theft suggested a frame. The cloak fragment's masculine scent, tobacco, heavy steps, pointed to Caruso or Marco. Yet Isabella's cunning could not be dismissed. Caruso's alibi for the galas, and his office alone was weak. A servant saw him leave at midnight toward the promenade. Business, he claimed, but refused to elaborate. Poirot pressed. Business with Signora Moretti, perhaps? A meeting turned deadly? Caruso's silence was damning, his motive of financial ruin clear. The tobacco on the cloak fragment, the LC initials, were they his or a clever ruse? The dagger's blood, tested by the chemist, matched Julia's, confirming it as a murder weapon or a decoy. Its twin, still in evidence, suggested a pair, perhaps owned by a collector among the suspects. Poirot questioned Vitale again, who recalled selling the daggers to a cloaked buyer, their face obscured. "A man, I think," Vitale said, "but I couldn't swear." The cloak fragment, the tobacco, the heavy steps, all pointed to a man, but which? Poirot returned to the promenade, the canal's surface dark under the stars. The sapphire, the dagger, the scarf, all found here, discarded in haste. The one who watches had struck from the shadows, their perch in the attic offering a perfect view. Poirot's mind raced. Julia's paranoia, her confrontation with her blackmailer, the struggle that broke the necklace. The letter to Ricci, the forged letter from Elena, the initials LC. Each clue tightened the web. A gondolier approached, his voice low. "Signore, I saw two figures that night, near the promenade, one cloaked, one smaller, lingering after the scream." Two figures? Poirot's pulse quickened. Was one the killer, the other a witness or accomplice? Marco's admission placed him there, but who else? Elena's walk, Caruso's departure, Ricci's sedatives, all fit, yet none perfectly. Back at the palazzo, Poirot gathered the suspects, their tension a fog under the chandelier's glow. "The canal has spoken," he said, holding the dagger. "Two figures, one crime, one truth. The watcher struck, but another saw. Who among you will confess?" Isabella sneered. Marco flinched. Caruso glared. Elena wept. Ricci trembled. Their reactions were a study in guilt, but the truth remained just out of reach. A servant's whisper interrupted. "Signore, I found this in the attic, a locket, hidden under a floorboard." Poirot opened it, revealing a miniature of Julia and Ricci, their faces close. A love token, or evidence of betrayal. Ricci's gasp confirmed its significance, but he said nothing. The locket, the letter, the dagger, all pointed to him, yet the second figure nagged at Poirot. "Dahinch Dion?" As the night deepened, a gondolier's shout echoed from the canal. "Signore! Another glint deeper still!" Poirot rushed to the bridge, the suspects trailing, their fear palpable. The diver surfaced, holding a sealed envelope, waterlogged but intact, addressed to Julia. Poirot's heart raced. What new secret did the canal hold? Chapter 8. The second figure, etched, 2,000 words, title 20 Shackled Audio. The gondolier's shout pierced the Venetian night, a clarion call that drew Hercule Poirot to the old bridge, where the Grand Canal shimmered under starlight. The diver, emerging from the inky depths, clutched a waterlogged envelope, its wax seal unbroken, addressed to Julia Moretti in a hurried script. The suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti, and Dr. Antonio Ricci, stood at the canal's edge, their faces taut with anticipation and dread. The bloodied scarf, the sapphire, the twin daggers, the blackmail letter, the locket, and now this envelope swirled in Poirot's mind, each a thread in a tapestry of murder drawing tighter. The canal, it seemed, held one more secret, and Poirot's grey cells burned to unravel it. Pause for effect. Poirot took the envelope, his gloved fingers tracing its sodden edges. The seal, embossed with a crest unfamiliar to him, suggested urgency, a message meant for Julia's eyes alone. He turned to the suspects, his voice calm but piercing. Mesdames et messieurs, the canal yields its truths. This envelope, it may name the killer, or deepen the mystery. Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair glinting in the lantern's glow, scoffed. Another distraction, Poirot. You chase shadows. Her tone was imperious, but her eyes betrayed unease, fixed on the envelope. The constable, ever present, took the envelope for safekeeping, promising to dry it carefully. Poirot's gaze swept the suspects, noting their reactions. Marco's trembling hands, Caruso's clenched jaw, Elena's tearful gasp, Ricci's pallor, Isabella's forced disdain. The gondolier's tale of two figures on the promenade, one cloaked, one smaller, lingering after the scream, echoed in his thoughts. A killer and a witness, or accomplices? The locket, showing Julia and Ricci, confirmed an affair, but the blackmail letter, the scarf, and the daggers suggested a broader conspiracy. Poirot led the suspects back to the palazzo, its marble halls aglow with candlelight, the air heavy with jasmine and suspicion. In the drawing-room, under the chandelier's golden haze, he confronted Eleanor Vitti, whose forged blackmail letter had shaken the investigation. Mademoiselle, you admitted to writing a letter to scare Signora Moretti, oui? Yet you were seen near the promenade at 4. Did you meet her, or see the second figure? Elena's eyes brimmed with tears. I sent the letter, but I didn't go. I was afraid, walking alone. Her confession, though damning, lacked the weight of murder, or so it seemed. Luca Caruso, his broad-frame tense, growled, This envelope, these figures, it's all to frame me. Poirot held up the blackmail letter with its LC initials. Monsieur, your argument with Signora Moretti, your presence at the palazzo's attic, both suggest guilt. The tobacco on the cloak fragment matches your brand. Caruso's scowl deepened. I told you, I was in my office. That letter's a lie. His alibi, solitary and unverified, crumbled under scrutiny. Yet the initials could be a ruse, deflecting blame. Isabella Rinaldi, her silk gown rustling, dismissed the new clue. An envelope? More theatrics, Poirot. Her voice was cool, but her glance toward the canal betrayed unease. Madame, Poirot countered, your glove, perfumed with Signora Moretti's scent, places you at the scene. Your rivalry burned bright, enough to kill? Isabella's laugh was sharp. I despised her, yes, but murder is beneath me. The glove was stolen. Her claim of theft held a ring of truth, but her presence near the safe suggested more. Marco Bellini, his paint-stained hands twitching, stared at the floor. I saw the cloaked figure, yes, but I didn't kill her. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Monsieur, your sketch of that figure, so precise. Did you watch from the shadows or act? Marco's voice cracked. I saw them argue, near the bridge. Then I ran. I feared they'd blame me. His admission placed him at the promenade, but as witness or killer. His debts, his rejection by Julia, painted a motive of desperation. Dr. Antonio Ricci, clutching his medical bag, stammered, I know nothing of envelopes or figures. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. Monsieur, your locket, your pen, your sedatives, all point to you. The letter to Signora Moretti, demanding a midnight meeting, confirms your intimacy. Ricci's tremor worsened. I loved her, yes, but I didn't meet her. I was home. His alibi, like Marco's, was weak, and the diary's note, Ricci knows too much, suggested a secret worth killing for. Poirot excused the suspects, retreating to Julia's study to ponder the envelope. Its crest, he learned from a servant, belonged to a minor Venetian noble family, long extinct, perhaps a symbolic choice, or a clue to the killer's identity. The dagger, confirmed to bear Julia's blood, was a twin to the murder weapon, suggesting a pair owned by a collector. The sapphire's broken clasp ruled out theft, pointing to a personal motive: revenge, silence, or betrayal. The scarf, the cloak fragment, the brick's warning, all screamed of a killer's haste. A servant, Maria, approached, her voice low. "Signore, I saw Signore Ricci in Signora Moretti's room days before, holding her hand. They spoke of secrets of shame." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And what did they say, mademoiselle?" Maria hesitated. She said, "If you tell, I'll ruin you." He begged her to stay silent. The affair, then, was real, and Julia's threat to expose it gave Ricci a potent motive. But was he the cloaked figure, or the smaller one? Poirot revisited the attic, its dusty air thick with secrets. The scuff mark, the cigarette butt, the unlatched window, all pointed to a watcher's perch. The view of Julia's bedroom and the promenade was clear, a perfect vantage point for a killer. The tobacco matched Caruso's. Brand but Marco's mud-stained boots suggested recent movement. Elena's small boots could fit if she'd changed shoes. Isabella's heels ruled her out, but her cunning lingered in Poirot's mind. The constable returned. The envelope dried and opened. Inside was a single sheet, in Julia's script. "The truth lies in the safe. If I die, look to the one who watches." The message echoed the earlier letter, confirming Julia's paranoia. The safe, already searched, held no more papers, but the scratch marks suggested tampering. Had the killer taken a vital clue? Poirot's pulse quickened. The one who watches was no metaphor, but a real figure, perhaps among the suspects. Poirot confronted Marco again, his studio a chaos of canvases. A new sketch, hidden under a cloth, showed two figures on the promenade, one cloaked, one smaller, holding a dagger. "You saw them, monsieur," Poirot said, his voice sharp. "Who was the smaller figure?" Marco's face crumpled. "I don't know, it was dark, misty, I only saw shapes." His fear was palpable, but his precision suggested more than a witness's memory. Was he protecting someone, or himself? Elena's tears, when questioned, turned to defiance. "I didn't see anyone. I forged the letter, yes, but I stayed away." Poirot pressed. "Mademoiselle, your diary speaks of a threat watching from above. Did you see the attic's light?" Elena's eyes widened. I thought it was a servant. I didn't go up." Her fear of the watcher suggested innocence, or a clever act. Her closeness to Ricci, their shared glances, hinted at complicity or manipulation. Isabella's alibi for the gala's end, a solitary walk, was unsupported. "I needed air," she said, her voice cool. Poirot countered, "And this walk, madame, took you near the promenade, where two figures were seen." Isabella's eyes flashed. "I was nowhere near. Someone uses my glove to frame me." Her rivalry, her presence near the safe, her stolen glove, all pointed to guilt, but the cloak's masculine scent suggested another. Caruso's departure at midnight, seen by a servant, placed him near the promenade. Business, he claimed, but refused to elaborate. Poirot pressed. Business with Signora Moretti, perhaps. A meeting turned deadly. Caruso's silence was damning, his motive of financial ruin clear. The tobacco on the cloak, the LC initials, were they his or a frame? The second figure, smaller, could be Eleanor, or another unseen. Ricci's sedatives, confirmed as potent, dulled Julia's senses before her death. "You drugged her, monsieur," Poirot said softly. Ricci protested. "I only helped her sleep. She was tormented." The locket, the letter, the pen, all pointed to an affair, and Julia's threat to expose it gave him motive. The smaller figure, lingering after the scream, could be Ricci, or someone he protected. Poirot returned to the promenade. The Ciudad Canal surfaced dark under the stars. The two figures, one cloaked, one smaller, suggested a killer and a witness, or accomplices. Marco's admission, Elena's walk, Caruso's departure, Ricci's secrets, all fit, yet none perfectly. The envelope's message "Look to the one who watches" pointed to the attic, the scuff mark, the cigarette butt. The killer had planned, watched, and struck. A servant's discovery deepened the mystery. "Signore, I found this in the garden, a button near the gate." Poirot examined it, its silver sheen engraved with a crest matching the envelope's seal. A noble's button, perhaps Caruso's, or a relic of the extinct family. The cloak fragment, the tobacco, the button, all pointed to a man, but which? Poirot gathered the suspects, their tension a fog under the chandelier's glow. "Two figures," he said, "one killer, one watcher. The canal, the attic, the envelope, all point to the truth." Isabella sneered. Marco flinched. Caruso glared. Elena wept. Ricci trembled. Their reactions were a study in guilt, but the second figure's identity eluded him. The locket, the letter, the dagger, all pointed to Ricci, yet the smaller figure suggested another. As he prepared to press further, a servant whispered, "Signore, the safe, it's been opened again." Poirot rushed to the study, finding the safe ajar, a single sheet inside. "The killer is among you. Trust no one." Julia's script, another warning, or a plant. The safe's lock, scratched anew, suggested recent tampering. Chapter 9. The Hidden Passage. 2,000 words, plus 20 gasher audio. The air in Giulia Moretti's palazzo hung heavy with the scent of wax and secrets. The chandelier's glow casting flickering shadows across the marble floors. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his gloved hand holding the note found in the newly opened safe. "The killer is among you. Trust no one." Written in Julia's elegant script, it was a chilling echo of her earlier warnings, suggesting she knew her death was near. The canal's envelope, the bloodied scarf, the sapphire, the twin daggers, the locket, the cloak fragment, and the silver button swirled in Poirot's mind, each a thread in a tapestry of murder, drawing ever tighter. The suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti, and Dr. Antonio Ricci, waited in the drawing room, their faces taut with fear and suspicion. A servant's whisper of a hidden passage in the palazzo had sparked Poirot's curiosity, promising to unravel the mystery or deepen its shadows. Pause for effect. Poirot examined the safe, its lock scratched anew, suggesting recent tampering. The note's warning, "The killer is among you," confirmed Julia's paranoia, her fear of betrayal. Had she hidden it herself, or had the killer planted it to mislead? He turned to the servant Maria, who lingered nervously. "Mademoiselle, this passage, where does it lead?" Maria's voice trembled. "Behind the study's bookcase, signore. It's old, used by the family long ago. I saw it once, as a child." Poirot's moustache twitched, his grey cells alight. A passage could explain the killer's movements, the watcher's perch, the second figure on the promenade. Poirot pressed the bookcase, its mahogany panels yielding a faint click. A section swung open, revealing a narrow corridor, its air thick with dust and damp stone. The suspects, summoned to the study, gasped as the passage was revealed. Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair catching the candlelight, scoffed. "A secret passage? This is melodrama, Poirot." Her tone was imperious, but her eyes darted to the dark opening. "Madame," Poirot countered, "murder is melodrama, and this passage may lead to the truth." Marco's hands trembled. Caruso's jaw clenched. Elena's tears fell, and Ricci's pallor deepened, a gallery of unease. Poirot led the way, a lantern in hand, the constable trailing with a notebook. The passage wound downward, its stone walls etched with faded crests matching the envelope's seal. Cobwebs clung to the ceiling, and a faint draught carried the scent of the canal. At its end, a small room opened, empty save for a bloodied handkerchief, its stain fresh, its edges monogrammed A.R. Antonio Ricci. Poirot's pulse quickened. "Monsieur Ricci, this is yours, oui? Found in a place only the killer would know." Ricci stammered, "It's not mine! I've never been here!" His denial was weak, his tremor damning. Poirot returned to the drawing room, the handkerchief in his pocket, the suspect's tension palpable. He held up the note from the safe. "Mesdames et messieurs, Signora Moretti knew her killer. She warned of betrayal, of a watcher. This passage, this handkerchief, they point to one among you." Caruso growled, "Another frame! That's not proof!" Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Monsieur, your tobacco matches the attic cigarette butt. Your initials, the blackmail letter. Explain." Caruso's scowl deepened. "I told you it's a lie. I was in my office." His alibi solitary crumbled further. Isabella Rinaldi, her silk gown rustling, dismissed the handkerchief. "Blood! Anyone could plant it, Poirot." Her voice was cool, but her glance toward Ricci betrayed suspicion. "Madame," Poirot said, "your glove, perfumed with Signora Moretti's scent, places you at the scene. You lingered near this study, near this passage." Isabella's eyes flashed. "I was curious, nothing more. My glove was stolen." Her rivalry with Julia, her presence near the safe, suggested guilt, but the handkerchief's masculine monogram pointed elsewhere. Marco Bellini, his paint-stained hands shaking, stared at the passage's entrance. "I didn't know it existed," he murmured. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur, your sketches show the promenade, the cloaked figure, the dagger, details." "Too precise. Did you use this passage to watch? To strike?" Marco's voice cracked. "I saw her that night, yes, but I ran. I didn't kill her." His admission, his debts, his presence at the scene tightened the noose, yet his grief seemed genuine, or artfully staged. Elena Vitti, fragile in her mourning dress, sobbed, "I didn't do this. Julia was my mentor." Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, you forged a blackmail letter. You had her key. You walked near the promenade. Did you know this passage?" Elena's eyes widened. "No, I only wanted her to keep me in her will." Her confession to forgery was damning, but her fear of the watcher suggested another's hand. Her closeness to Ricci hinted at complicity or manipulation. Dr. Antonio Ricci, clutching his medical bag, was pale. "That handkerchief, it's not mine." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Monsieur, your pen, your locket, your sedatives, now this handkerchief, all point to you. The letter to Signora Moretti confirms your affair." Ricci's tremor worsened. "I loved her, yes, but I didn't kill her. Someone uses my things." The diary's note, "Ricci knows too much," suggested a secret beyond love, perhaps worth killing for. Poirot excused the suspects, retreating to the passage to examine the handkerchief. Its blood, fresh and human, matched Julia's, confirmed by the chemist's earlier report. Had it been hidden here since the murder, or planted recently? The passage's exit, he discovered, led to a narrow calle near the promenade, a perfect route for the cloaked figure to flee unseen. The one who watches, noted in Julia's letters, had used this passage spying from the attic striking on the promenade. A servant, Maria, approached, her voice low. "Signore, I saw Signore Bellini near the study last night, after the gala. He was agitated." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And what did he do, mademoiselle?" Maria hesitated. "He touched the bookcase, then left quickly. I thought he was drunk." Marco's presence near the passage, his sketches of the cloaked figure, his admission of seeing Julia argue, all pointed to him as the watcher or the killer. Poirot revisited the attic, its window offering a clear view of the promenade. The scuff mark, the cigarette butt, the unlatched window, all confirmed a watcher's perch. The tobacco matched Caruso's brand, but Marco's mud-stained boots suggested recent movement. Elena's small boots could fit if she'd changed shoes. Ricci's polished shoes were clean, but his nervous demeanour betrayed guilt. Isabella's heels ruled her out, but her cunning lingered in Poirot's mind. The envelope from the canal, dried and opened, revealed a second note in Julia's script. "If I die, the dagger's twin holds the truth." The twin daggers, both bloodied, suggested a deliberate act. A pair owned by a collector, perhaps among the suspects. Poirot questioned the jeweller Vitale, who confirmed selling the daggers to a cloaked buyer, their face obscured. "A man, I think," Vitale said, "but I couldn't swear." The cloak fragment, the tobacco, the heavy steps, all pointed to a man, but which? Poirot confronted Elena again, her tears turning to defiance. "I didn't know the passage. I forged the letter, but I didn't kill her." Poirot pressed. "Mademoiselle, your key opened the safe. Your diary speaks of betrayal. Did you see the watcher?" Elena's eyes widened. "I saw a shadow in the attic window, but I thought it was nothing." Her fear of the watcher suggested innocence, or a clever act. Her closeness to Ricci hinted at a shared secret. Isabella's alibi, a solitary walk, was unsupported. "I needed air," she said, her voice cool. Poirot countered, "And this walk, madame, took you near the promenade, where two figures were seen?" Isabella's eyes flashed. "I was nowhere near. The glove is a lie." Her rivalry, her presence near the safe, her stolen glove, all suggested guilt, but the passage's masculine clues pointed elsewhere. Caruso's departure at midnight, seen by a servant, placed him near the promenade. Business, he claimed, but refused to elaborate. Poirot pressed. "Business with Signora Moretti, perhaps? A meeting turned deadly?" Caruso's silence was damning, his motive of financial ruin clear. The tobacco on the cloak, the LC initials, were they his or a frame? The second figure, smaller, could be Eleanor or another unseen. Ricci's sedatives, confirmed as potent, dulled Julia's senses before her death. "You drugged her, monsieur," Poirot said softly. Ricci protested. "I only helped her sleep. She was tormented." The locket, the letter, the handkerchief, all pointed to an affair, and Julia's threat to expose it gave him motive. The smaller figure, lingering after the scream, could be Ricci, or someone he protected. Poirot returned to the passage, its damp walls whispering of secrets. A faint scratch on the floor, near the handkerchief, matched the safe's marks, suggesting the killer's haste. The passage's exit near the promenade explained the cloaked figure's escape, the second figure's lingering. Poirot's mind raced. Julia's confrontation, the struggle, the broken necklace. The one who watches had used the passage planned from the attic struck on the promenade. A servant's discovery deepened the mystery. "Signore, I found this in the passage, a ring, caught in a crack." Poirot examined it, its silver band engraved with the same crest as the envelope and button. A noble's ring, perhaps Caruso's, or a relic of the extinct family. The cloak, the tobacco, the ring, all pointed to a man, but which? Poirot gathered the suspects, their tension a fog under the chandelier's glow. The passage, he said, was the killer's path. The handkerchief, the ring, the daggers all point to one among you. Isabella sneered. Marco flinched. Caruso glared. Elena wept. Ricci trembled. Their reactions were a study in guilt, but the second figure's identity eluded him. The locket, the letter, the handkerchief, all pointed to Ricci, yet the smaller figure suggested another. As he prepared to press further, Maria whispered, "Signore, the attic window, it's open again." Poirot rushed upstairs, finding the window unlatched, a fresh scuff mark beside it. Someone had returned, watching still. The canal below glinted, as if mocking his pursuit. Chapter 10. The Grey Cell's Triumph. 2,000 words. 20 Howlcliss audio. The palazzo's grand hall glowed under the chandelier's golden light, its marble floors reflecting the flickering candles like stars on the Grand Canal. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his impeccable suit and waxed moustache, a beacon of order amidst the chaos of Giulia Moretti's murder. The suspects, Marco Bellini, Contessa Isabella Rinaldi, Luca Caruso, Elena Vitti and Dr. Antonio Ricci, sat before him. Their faces a tapestry of fear, defiance, and guilt. The hidden passage, the bloodied handkerchief, the sapphire, the twin daggers, the blackmail letter, the locket, the silver ring, and the reopened attic window swirled in Poirot's mind, each clue a thread now woven into a clear pattern. The one who watches, Giulia's final warning, was no longer a shadow, but a figure about to be unmasked. Venice's mist seemed to part, revealing the truth at last. Pause for effect. Poirot's voice, calm and precise, filled the hall. Mesdames et messieurs, the truth, it is like the canal, deep but not impenetrable. Signora Moretti's death was no act of chance. It was a performance, staged with care. Hercule Poirot's grey cells have unravelled its secrets. The suspects shifted, their eyes darting. Isabella's cold, Marco's haunted, Caruso's defiant, Elena's tearful, Ricci's trembling. The air was thick with jasmine and tension, the canal's distant lapping a counterpoint to Poirot's measured words. He began with the blackmail letter, its LC initials a spark that ignited suspicion. "Mademoiselle Vitti," Poirot said, turning to Elena, "you confessed to forging a letter to scare Signora Moretti into keeping you in her will. A desperate act, oui, but not murder." Elena's sobs broke the silence, her handkerchief twisting. "I only wanted her love," she cried. Poirot nodded, his gaze softening. "Your letter was a red herring, mademoiselle, but it set the stage for the true killer's act." Poirot turned to Luca Caruso, his broad frame tense. "Monsieur Caruso, your initials on the letter pointed to you, as did the tobacco on the cloak fragment. Your losses with Signora Moretti, your argument at the gala, these gave you motive. Yet your alibi, though weak, holds." Caruso's scowl softened, relief flickering in his eyes. "I told you. I didn't. Kill her!" Poirot's moustache twitched. "No, monsieur, but you were watched, your name used to mislead." Isabella Rinaldi, her auburn hair a fiery crown, scoffed. "This is absurd, Poirot. My glove was stolen, my name slandered." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame, your rivalry with Signora Moretti burned bright. The glove, perfumed with her scent, placed you at the scene. You lingered near the safe, near the passage. Yet the glove was planted, was it not?" Isabella's lips pursed, her defiance wavering. "I despised her, but I didn't kill her." Poirot nodded. "The truth, it clears you, but not without stain." Marco Bellini, his paint-stained hands trembling, stared at the floor. "I loved her," he murmured. Poirot's voice was sharp. "Monsieur, your sketches of the cloaked figure, The dagger, the promenade. They place you at the scene. You saw the murder. We?" Marco's eyes widened. "I saw her argue. Yes, with a cloaked figure. I ran, fearing blame." Poirot's gaze softened. "You were the second figure, monsieur. The smaller one, lingering after the scream. A witness, not a killer." Poirot turned to Dr. Antonio Ricci, whose pallor was stark under the chandelier's glow. "Monsieur Ricci, your pen, your locket, your sedatives, your handkerchief, all point to you. The letter in the safe, the note in the canal, the diary's warning, Ricci knows too much. They tell a story of love and betrayal." Ricci's tremor worsened, his medical bag slipping from his grasp. "I loved her, yes, but I didn't kill her." His voice cracked, a plea that rang hollow. Poirot paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. "Let us reconstruct, mes amis. Signora Moretti, tormented by secrets, was summoned to the promenade by a blackmail letter, not Mademoiselle Vitti's forgery, but another penned by the killer. She wore her sapphire necklace, its clasp intact as seen in Monsieur Bellini's sketch. Drugged by sedatives, yours, Monsieur Ricci, she was vulnerable. A struggle ensued, the clasp broke, the sapphire fell. The killer struck with the dagger, then fled through the hidden passage, discarding the second dagger in the canal. The suspects leaned forward, their breaths uneven. Poirot continued. The passage, its exit near the promenade, allowed the cloaked figure to vanish. The handkerchief monogrammed AR was left in haste, its blood Signora Moretti's. The attic window, reopened, was the watcher's perch, offering a view of the crime. The locket, the letter to Ricci, the diary, all confirm an affair. A secret Julia threatened to expose. The killer could not allow this. Poirot held up the handkerchief. It stained stark. "Monsieur Ricci, you loved Signora Moretti, oui, but she held a secret over you, not just an affair, but a scandal. She knew you falsified medical records for a patient, a noble, to hide a shameful illness. Exposure would ruin you." Ricci gasped, his face a crumpling. "How did you—" Poirot raised a hand. "The diary, the locket, your nervous visits, they betray you. You drugged her with sedatives stronger than you admitted to dull her senses." The hall was silent, save for the canal's distant lapping. Poirot continued, his voice relentless. "You met her at midnight, as her letter demanded. She confronted you, threatening to expose your fraud. In a moment of panic, you struck with the dagger, a pair, bought anonymously, as Monsieur Vital confirmed. The second dagger discarded in the canal was meant to mislead. The glove, stolen from Madame Rinaldi, you planted to frame her, knowing her rivalry would draw suspicion." Ricci's knees buckled, his voice a whisper. "I didn't mean to. She wouldn't stop. She'd ruin me." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "You watched from the attic, planned from the passage, struck on the promenade. The cloak fragment, the tobacco, the heavy steps, they were yours, monsieur. The smaller figure, Monsieur Bellini, saw you flee but feared to speak. The silver ring, the button, the envelope's crest, all relics of your noble patient, used to disguise your act." The suspects gasped, their eyes on Ricci, who collapsed into a chair sobbing. "I loved her, but she wouldn't let me go." Poirot's voice was calm but firm. "Love, monsieur, does not justify murder. You betrayed her trust, her life, for your own." The constable stepped forward, handcuffs ready, as Ricci's confession spilled forth, a torrent of guilt, fear, and regret. Poirot turned to the others, his gaze softening. "Madame Rinaldi, your rivalry blinded you, but you are no killer. Monsieur Caruso, your losses drove you to anger, but not to murder. Mademoiselle Vitti, your forgery was a mistake, but your heart was not cruel. Monsieur Bellini, your fear kept you silent, but you witnessed the truth." Isabella's eyes glistened. Caruso's shoulders sagged. Elena's tears slowed, and Marco nodded, his face pale. The sapphire necklace, retrieved from the canal, was returned to Julia's estate, its curse a myth dispelled by Poirot's logic. Elena, chastened, vowed to honour Julia's charity, her inheritance redirected to good. Isabella, humbled, retreated to her palazzo, her pride tempered. Caruso, cleared, returned to his ledgers, his losses a private shame. Marco, shaken, burned his sketches, seeking to erase the memory of that night. Poirot stepped onto the palazzo's balcony, the canal below a ribbon of starlight. The case was closed, but Venice's shadows held countless secrets. The passage, the attic, the promenade. They had whispered their truths, and Poirot had listened. The one who watches was unmasked, the grey cells triumphant. Yet a faint unease lingered. Had all secrets been revealed, or did the canal hold more? A gondolier's call broke Poirot's reverie. "Signore, to your hotel." Poirot nodded, boarding the gondola, his cane resting beside him. The mist parted, revealing Venice's spires, their beauty undimmed by tragedy. The case of Giulia Moretti was solved, her killer brought to justice, but Poirot's mind already turned to the next mystery, the next challenge to his grey cells. As the gondola glided away, Poirot reviewed the clues. The sapphire's clasp, broken in struggle, the twin daggers, one planted to mislead, the handkerchief left in haste, the passage, the killer's path, the locket, proof of love and betrayal. Each had pointed to Ricci, his motive clear, silence Giulia's threat to expose his fraud. The smaller figure, Marco, had seen but not acted, his fear a silent witness. The palazzo receded, its lights fading into the mist. Poirot's thoughts lingered on Giulia, her life a tapestry of glamour and secrets, her death a tragedy of trust betrayed. The suspects, cleared or condemned, would carry the weight of this night. Elena's tears, Isabella's pride, Caruso's losses, Marco's fear, they were human, flawed, but not killers. Ricci alone bore the guilt, his love twisted into murder. The gondolier hummed a soft tune, the canal's ripples a lullaby. Poirot closed his eyes, the case resolved, his mind at peace. The one who watches was no more, the truth laid bare. Yet Venice, with its labyrinth of canals and shadows, whispered of mysteries unsolved, waiting for another day, another triumph of the grey cells. As the gondola neared his hotel, a final clue surfaced. A servant's note slipped to Poirot. "The canal holds one more secret, signore." Poirot's pulse quickened, but he smiled. "Another time, perhaps," he murmured, stepping onto the dock. The mist closed around him. Venice's secret safe for now.